And on behalf of my co-panelist, I welcome you all participants. I should rather call you as netizens because we are now living in a global village, and this pandemic has really made this world as a global village. And you are the digital native of this particular global village. We, as educators, are the digital immigrants. Am I correct, Amrita? We are trying to be in your place, trying to be the native of this digital field, which is something new to us. But you have taken it, or you have started with it. Personally, I would like to give you a small example. This has happened last year when I visited US to meet my granddaughter. She's just 2 years old, and I was surprised to see with what ease she was able to open the YouTube logo. She could identify that from the home page. She could go into that, and then she could scroll down and find out a particular Cocomelon rhyme which she wanted to listen. And my daughter was getting mad that she always, the whole day, she keeps using this phone. I don't want her to use this phone and all those. So I thought that I'm a smart person and I can do something, and she's a child, just 2 years old. So what I did is I have removed the logo of YouTube from the home page, and I thought that this is enough. She may not be. But next day morning, the whole day she tried her best. Next day morning, it came to us as a surprise when we found Cocomelon rhymes were still playing. And I realized that she could go into the app drawer. Home screen I have removed, but the child of 2 years knows that it is in the app drawer. YouTube logo is still there. She could go there and could play. So the point what I am saying is the children of today, they are playing in the digital playground rather than the physical playground. Now we may debate on this: what is good, what is not good. But right now, what we are talking about, the familiarity of technology to this new set of people. I mean, these kids, they are really far better. I know my grandson, he is just 8. He has done a course in coding. He has created 2 apps. 8 years old child created 2 apps, one for recognizing colors by the children, another is how to solve mathematical calculations. Imagine the familiarity. Now, we have to utilize and we have to leverage this interest of them into the technology and take use of that to help them get educated. See, earlier days, there used to be a problem of hardware. We did not have hardwares. There was a costly affair. But with the advent of this mobile phone, I think things are very, very simple. It is already reached. In India, even today, India is a developing country. 32% mobile penetration is there, which is going to be 36% by 2022. So the point is, why can't we leverage this? So that is one point that I wanted to say. But the point is, before even go into that and we decide the role of technology into education, first let us talk about the education per se. Because ed tech, my first 2 letters are ed, that is education. And if we all know that English, most of the words have been taken either by Greek or Latin. So the word education has come from two Latin word called ek duret. Now, ek duret meaning to bring out. Unfortunately, the our current Lord Macaulay's education system, which was started somewhere in 1835, because Britishers wanted clerks who can help them do their industrial revolution help. But now it is not required. So on one hand, we have to change the entire education system, but technology can help us do that. Because in our earlier days, it is a classroom, 60 children are sitting there, teacher is one, and the same message is passing on. But with the help of this technology, we can personalize. Like today, we get in Facebook or any other thing, any other social media platform, we get all the personalized ads. Similarly, even the teaching or the learning can also be passed. That is personalization. And we have expert with us who would like to discuss with you as to how are we going to use this. Today, as such, we do not need those typical classrooms. If you need knowledge, go to Google. If you need skills, go to YouTube. You have everything. The only thing is that internet is full with some fake informations as well. So as a role of educator, we need to have the relevant material, relevant information, and the valid information being shared with the student. And for that, I am sure, Amrita, you are an expert, and I am sure you would be sharing this with the group. Now, in fact, the entire methodology is now changing. Earlier, we used to have LMS, which was Learning Management Systems. Now it has replaced by LXP, that is Learning Experience Platform. So the way we are using these platforms, we need to. I know there is a question asked by some of the participants that we have so many tools are available, how to use. So I understand these tools are made by the organization for them, not for the participant alone. Because the companies who invest money, they see their profit as well. So the point is, the role of educator here is to ensure that what is the right platform or what is the right tool for my set of student. That is what, as an educator, we need to decide. Now, there are too many things. I understand, and I'm like Amrita and Priya would talk about this AR, VR, the 3D, the all the latest technology, the uses of those in the field of education. Since I come from the corporate world, I would like to share one particular example as to how we have utilized uh, technology to educate our people, and that too in a large number. Like in 1 year, we have trained 3.5 lakh people, our delivery partners, with a single app-based training module. Imagine in a year if we have to do 3.5 lakh training hour means mandates. I mean, how many people you will require trainers and classrooms and all those administrative. So the point is that training can be easily delivered or the teaching can be easily delivered through technology. Only thing is we have to be mindful that what we are doing is matching the needs of the learners. Like in this case, I know that my team was skeptical. Ki, sir, we will whether we will get the same result what we were getting earlier by our own training. Even the business was having doubt, but we have proved beyond doubts that with this app-based training, not only we have achieved the number of 99.89% people getting trained on time, but also the results were same. We have received 87% of pass percentage, and the most important is just not the pass percentage and all. We have even gone to the extent of managing as to whether these people are getting uh, improved in their functioning. And we have seen four parameters, the quality parameters, which were important. And in each of these, the scores obtained, the people who have done online training, they have performed much better. So the point is, technology can really add value, and this was more for the white blue collars. Since we have corporate people from the corporate world, I would also like to add one that there are four skills that we need in our field force in our
Mic is on now.
unfortunately.
Uh, one minute, video is not in. Yeah. Now both have come.
Yeah, and these four are collaboration, because
Right.
you need to collaborate with the people for performing your function. Communication, whether it is a leadership or whether it's the peer-to-peer communication or whether to create the culture in the company, you need communication. Critical thinking is very, very important, and of course, creativity. And since Amrita has done a lot of work on these four areas, I would expect her to talk about her perspective as to how we can start building these qualities in student itself so that when
Excellent.
we become corporate citizen tomorrow to perform those skills with ease. With this, I would hand it over to Amrita to carry on with her perspective.
Good. Uska.
Thank you, sir. I think there was a slight disturbance here, so we couldn't. I couldn't hear the last part of what you said. I
Okay,
hope I am audible.
okay. So just a minute. I think so what I said is that in the corporate world, we need four qualities or the four skills in our people. And I'm sure that will be shared by every person who is working in the corporate. The first one is collaboration. Now, collaboration is required because we are supposed to work in a team and then perform and produce results together. Not one person can produce results. The second thing is communication. Now, communication could be at the level of leadership. Communication could be at the level of peer-to-peer.
Thank
And
you very
communication
much.
also is to create from organization to the people in terms of culture building. So communication is omnipotent. Then of course critical thinking. Very, very important because we need people who can think on their own and can get some result which is required. And last and not least is the creativity. So since you have worked in all these four areas, what I
Okay.
expect you to highlight how we can imbibe these skills in the student itself who is learning, and when he becomes a corporate citizen tomorrow, he has all the skills required.
So, sir, you're talking about the four C's:
Yes,
creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. Yes, of course, popularly called 21st century skills. Though I kind of don't really prefer using that term. We are already in that century, and
yes,
as for me, I think these skills are always needed.
right.
I have a slight disagreement on one of the things that one of the things you said, that Google Class, just you don't need anything else. There's Google if you want to study. There's YouTube if you want to imbibe skills. Yes, there is technology, and it is useful, but and it is here to stay. And yes, our entire environment is completely changing. Now we are living with digital natives. They are born with it. You talked about your grandchildren, and I can see a really proud and happy grandfather speaking from that perspective, which is sweet. And children are different, but I personally feel that every generation is smarter than the previous one.
Right.
Every generation, and that's why the role of the teacher or educator has always been a very, very tough one. We have technology, but we cannot remove the personal touch that the educator brings to the
Good.
table, and the facilitator, rather than the teacher is the term that we use, and the facilitator is the person who really, really is there to provide that direction, is there to provide that emotional, social underpinning, that support that a child needs in growing and learning. We can't remove values out of the education system. So
Of
that
course.
is very key.
Of
And like
course.
you said, yes, the old ridden ways of education, the straight rows, the older style of the classroom is long since passé. I mean, that's something what Taylor Gatto calls the weapons of mass instruction. That is something that the Industrial Revolution needed back then and invented, and it continued. But what long since I think progressive institutions and most of the education experts around the globe realized that learning needs to be student centric. Learning needs to be in the hands of the learner. And when we talk about technology, there were times some years ago when the smart classes were a big deal, and schools vied with each other, and everybody everywhere had the smart classroom, which was essentially a very teacher centric model. In any case, I mean, the board was at one corner and the teacher showed some kind of video or something, and the children were just sitting there watching. They were still mute spectators. That is not something that works well, according to me. Even for technology to be effective, as in the example you shared with your granddaughter, the 2-year-old who could find out the app and the app store and could take it out despite you trying to dissuade her or whatever. So even for technology to be effective as a tool for learning, technology needs to be in the hands of the learner. And what this pandemic essentially has done for many of us, it's kind of, we were all talking about it since years, but it has kind of rammed the future upon us. And given the situation, given the emergency, yes, we've had to use devices. Which does not go on to say that that's the best solution or that's the right thing to do only, but yes, they're useful. We currently have a choice between online education and no education, rather than there's no other mode possible. Safety of children is a priority. So therefore, yes, it is important and urgent, but you can't transport a typical classroom to a technology or an online classroom.
Absolutely.
So this needs a lot of teacher support. This needs a lot of, we can't have a teacher suddenly being told that, listen, you need to prepare some kind of a module and put it out there and children will see it. No, that doesn't work. There are children in different kinds of environments themselves and situations themselves. Anyway, everybody is unique. Every child is special. Every child is unique, and so is every. So is every teacher. Not everybody has the same skills. So very important. Although this lockdown was suddenly, announced, but we, for example, at our institution, did realize what's happening across the globe. We had the backing of UAE schools and other parts of the world where we were already doing it. So we set systems well ahead of time. Back in January, we started trainings of the teachers on online learning and how to be able to use these platforms, how to make collaborative learning possible online, how to ensure differentiated instruction, or how to ensure inclusion online. What do we do in case a child doesn't have a device? What do we do in case of early childhood, where they are different, obviously very different from other learners? What do we do for a child who's not so comfortable with this model of learning, needs a different kind of support other than just typical, a teacher synchronous and asynchronous support? So what kind of combinations are possible? How do we engage children, and instead of just expecting them to sit there and listen to people talking on a screen, which is so impersonal, which is so different, and not necessarily the right thing? And how do we still manage to ensure some kind of normalcy for the child in these times of uncertainty and turmoil all around them? How do we ensure some kind of routine for the child so that they feel that they can cope with this whole thing around them, and they actually learn? The focus has not been so much on only syllabus is the last thing to worry about. Although, to be honest, what we've realized as schools is that we did not give it priority, but it got done. And how is because learning, yes, thanks to technology and so many tools that it offers, to the teachers when they are trained and when they start exploring, it does get personalized. The teacher does get to know where each child is, what the specific area of concern is. Feedback is a very key thing to the education process. You can't do away with feedback, right? So, and it's phenomenal. There's a lot of research. I'll not go into that detail right now here, but there's a lot of research to say how the impact of positive reinforcement and the impact of genuine constructive feedback on learning or on learning outcomes. And that is something with which technology helps. Now, feedback, if given for something, maybe 2 days down the line, when a teacher is able to check a physical notebook paper or an assignment and get back to the child. Normally, teachers have gone through that scenario where teachers give back, the notebooks to children, and children are like, I'm not bothered to see what you did with there. Yes. This obsession with marks is so cruel in our system. It needs to be done away with, because the idea is to encourage growth mindsets and genuine, real learning rather than just this whole struggle, this whole rat race. So we have to get children away from that, and I think high time now we think through this, and a lot is changing on that front. What is happening is when the teacher uses a Kahoot or a Quizzes, and right there the teacher sees, okay, this particular aspect, most of them haven't got it, or this child is not being able to do this bit. It's not about which learner is smarter or tagging them. That's the worst thing to do. But for each concept, we all are different. We all may vary in terms of what kind of prior knowledge we had on a certain thing, what were we already confused about, and then how to build on that. So the teacher gets to know this immediately and is able to share it with the learner immediately. That has a beautiful impact, and that's been helping a lot. The collaboration the children are being able to do, the kind of critical thinking that we are being able to build into the system. Now think of assessment, for example. Now parents have been asking that question in online assessment, how do you ensure academic integrity, the honesty, and so on? Well, that needs to be something that's itself a skill. That is itself something that's a value the children must develop. And how assessment needs to change then to ensure that also, because we will have to have a better system. So yes, it's more of case study based assessment, more of open book exam kind of assessment. Now the concept, you no longer relegate it to checking just rote. You
Yes.
have to now check critical appreciation of things or critical thinking. You have to see whether the child has really acquired the skill, whether the child is being able to, the concept is clear or not, and are they being able to use it? Are they being able to take it forward? Uh, Lots of self and peer evaluation is integrated into this system, because again, that feedback is not just something coming from the teacher. Feedback comes from students to each other. Feedback, most importantly, comes from oneself. When I get something right, when I do something right, I'm the one who knows, and that yeah, this one was good. When I as a teacher, finish with a good lesson, I know there is a satisfaction inside, and that tells me. And then yes, the ability to be able to take it from somebody else, and to accept good feedback, and accept feedback which tells you, here is your area of development, this is not so great. This is something which is crucial. Same time, I hear so much of discussion about screen time. I mean, I really sometimes want to ask parents, what are the children doing if not really structured system of education in the house? What do you engage them with? We see parents engaging children with too much of binge watching. Parents are also busy. And what do you do with the divide that gets created, the digital divide in our society? So I firmly believe no longer can we say roti, kapda, or makan. Now the essentials have changed. I mean, internet has become a priority. It's become like like an essential. So it's now roti, kapda, makan, and internet. We need to ensure that this is a facility available. This is like a birthright, and it's just like a right to education. There needs to be a right to internet, and cyber safety security needs to be built into the system so that our children are protected.
Good.
WhatsApp has been helping, yes, but it's not as effective. And yes, some children are suffering while we are seeing so many positives also. So that's where I come
Good.
from.
So I think thanks a lot, Amrita, for sharing your perspective. Very valid points that you have discussed. Now I think we will move on to take Dr. Mitu Zalur point of view. He is managing, I mean, a different word, like say, especially being from an NGO, and that too, he has done a lot of work on digitization. So we would like to know from your as to what all initiatives you have taken with technology and educating, especially the kind of children, especially able children that you have in your field.
Thanks so much, Vivek. And uh, Amrita said most of what one was thinking of. But I'll just take you all away vicariously a little bit to another section of children. And I noticed that there is a question from the audience about them. And that's about 60% of your children who are actually very deprived. I mean, many of them are like what you've been seeing, the very poignant and terrible stories of our migrant laborers. So I'm really dealing with hugely disadvantaged, impoverished kids, probably the first generation learners out there in the slums, which, as you know, are nearly 62% of this city. And so we've had to do a lot of changing of the curriculum and presentation. And one of the things have been quite interesting. It's called an ecological inventory, where you go out and actually see for yourself what the children see, smell, hear, do, and not impose on them, many of the colonial books like Alice in Wonderland or whatever. So we just really have to zoom in and find out more about their environment, what they're used to. So with that observation, we managed an ecological inventory, and we designed the enrichment program because I'm also interested that you have got a question on the 2 to 5 years, which is something that really interests me because they are the most critically crucial years, and all your social, emotional, physical, and most of all cognitive development takes place 2 to 5 years. So, what we had done is actually get inclusive nurseries done all over. So we've done more than 10,000 kids really in the slum areas. And the measurement actually shows that uh, uh, both the disabled child or the child with special needs is doing as well as a child who's normal, and that's quite remarkable because they're all first gender. That's a commonality in the, but they're all doing extremely well now. Coming to digitalization and technology, we've got to understand it's a different environment. It's not like any of our privileged children. So it's not that all of them have laptops and computers, etc. I mean, we know that they have mobile phones. In fact, it's interesting that they have no mobile phones and toilets in slums. So this mobile phone is the answer. And so we do most of our lessons through mobile phones. So what is interesting, what Amrita said, is that we foresaw some of these problems only because traveling is so expensive. So children coming and going was not really happening. So we did something called home management. With home management, what happened? We became very close to the parents. And so it was parents in partnership. And they had their smartphones. That was great. And with that, we started telling them exactly how to teach, what to teach. And the main idea was actually strengthening the parents and getting them empowered to believe that they could also contribute because we didn't have so much resources as to produce teachers. So parents in partnership and empowering parents as a major stakeholder is very important because otherwise the teacher tends to de-skill parents. And I'm very happy to say that even in our best schools, like say one of the schools where my granddaughter is going, the Bombay International School, uh, the parents are very involved in the actual teaching. So, and that's of course through the laptops and the tabs, etc. But our teaching is virtually done through the WhatsApp and through the smartphones. And
Great.
we then, after that, we follow it up with a one-to-one interviews to see if they have actually got it. The other thing is, in our area where the children can get deformed, etc., we have to have treatment. So what we do is we've started a new thing after the COVID, which is called teletherapy and telemedicine. In fact, telemedicine is a very good software that has been developed called Laxa. And teletherapy is another thing which an orthopedic surgeon is doing with our therapists. So, getting the individual problem, as Vivek mentioned, it's all really individualized, as Amrita said also. So, we've got to be having individualized treatment for the parent to empower the parent to carry on. Otherwise, the 3-4 months is going to be hugely wasted. So we've done that. And what we have done is really human resource development and online teaching through a very big grant from Oracle. So there what we've done is distance learning about what are the needs of the special child,
Great.
which actually is inclusive ed, which was mentioned by Amrita, is actually education for all, regardless of class, caste, ability.
Great.
So it's really high quality education. So one is moving towards that, especially when you've got the World Sustainable Development Goals, etc., United Nations, everybody recommending that all children are referred to as placed under difficult circumstances. So there may be some kind of learning problems even with normal kids, but it's very, very important to do human resource development and empower your teachers. So, besides your parents, you move to the regular teachers, and research is showing that 70% of your teachers they don't know about learning problems and they don't know how to go about it. So they slapped and imposed some kind of syllabus, etc., which they are following. So I think that the most important thing is to deinstitutionalize. So that is what we've done: demystify education and show that other people can also be learners, etc. So we've started this online teaching as well, and that's going to, at the moment, it's in a pilot stage, and we've done nearly 600 regular teachers who've been very, very eager, to learn. So the teachers out there want to learn. I mean, certainly they've got their hearts in their right places. So emotionally they're charged. And then, of course, there's a mandate in your country that it's a right to education. And today, all disabled children are supposed to be, or people with special needs, which is a more generic kind of a term, must be a part of regular and mainstream education. So it's so much better for the child herself to understand the differences and to celebrate differences and not really be brought up in a too privileged and too affluent thing. So we've tried to move away from that and deinstitutionalize and make it much more community based and much more value based. And the values need not come much later. You can start the value based education right from the last point I would really like to make is we work on a macro level with the government. So we are actually dealing with ICDS workers, local Anganwadi workers of the government, as well as Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. So we have masses of those kind of teachers who we are trying to train through online teaching. But everything has to be made different languages and different levels. You can't be talking only on one level.
Thank you, Doctor.
I'll stop there for the time.
Yeah, I would like, because we have paucity of time, and then there are certain questions from the audience.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you very much, and especially the point which you have stressed upon. Again, like the mobile, because that is something has really, smartphones have really changed the way we used to have the technology for teaching or learning. I still remember 2014 when I was in Flipkart. I wanted to introduce myself this online learning, but we could not. I was taking care of HR as well, so I have introduced one what we call it as a BYOD, like bring your own device, because companies wanted to invest, and with that also we face problem. But by the time I joined Zomato, I think people are now having everybody is having a smartphone, so that's how we could do. So same is true like what Amrita was also talking about, like everybody is at home also we have. The only thing is how to use this technology or how to use this piece, when to use, how to use, those are the very important questions. Amrita, there is a question by Jahan, I think you have already answered that in your discussion. If you can highlight as an answer to her.
Thank you for sharing that question, and Jehan, actually, thank you for asking that question. It's very, very valid. The question, I'll just read the question. Where in all this does social emotional well-being fit in? There are gaps that digital online platforms cannot fill in. What are your thoughts on addressing these aspects and so on? So I'll not elaborate further, but I get the gist of the question is, yes, see, social emotional well-being, and I think I started my discussion earlier with
Yeah,
this one
that is what I said we have already covered.
yeah. So social emotional well-being to me is at the center of any kind of teacher-student interaction. So if that's why I said that syllabus is like not something that we need to be right now focusing on. We really need to be focusing only on social emotional well-being. That's like a priority at this point in time, and therefore, life, every lesson, no matter what you're teaching, it doesn't have to be taught in a vacuum. It is not a concept in a vacuum. It's a concept in our world. And the very idea of the teacher, connecting with the child, the kind of, that's why, when people say only asynchronous is fine, share a video, and that's that, and children will complete an assignment or give them some stuff to do or textbooks and so on, or work to do, and they'll get back. That doesn't work. That's why we need the synchronous meeting of the teacher and the student every day. We are doing things like there are mentor teachers for about every 5 children, who connect with them for general discussions, chit chat. Even during a 1 month of summer, every week teachers had a contact time with children where they would just ask how are things, because we know that children these days, this is not like a regular summer, right? So children are actually stuck at home in a lockdown. There can be all kinds of stress. So, lots of focused work on stress management, lots of focused work on their well being is required, not just for children, also for parents. So, the teachers, the counselors, that's been like at the center. And Jehan, you are part of theatre in education, and that is again something that comes in very handy. That is, so theatre classes went on. That is something I did not compromise during the lockdown, despite the tough schedules. Theatre, music, dance. I mean, you have to. We've been watching children every day online, and the minute the music teacher or the dance teacher walks in on the screen, there is a special kind of a glee, and children have a relationship, a bonding with teachers. And now what's happened over these last 2 3 months is that we've seen that this bonding has grown from just between children and teachers to children, teachers, and parents.
Parents.
Parents and teachers are beautifully bonding now, and looking forward to the next class. We particularly faced challenges initially, with early childhood. How do you manage it for a 2 to 5 year old? And somebody has already asked that question, so I really want to address that. So with 2 to 5 year olds, it's even more important for that child to be able to connect. So somebody tells me that once in a week they can have a lesson. Well, that doesn't work, and the parent can do all the rest. Well, parent is not a trained educator. No matter how much we can train them, can we expect them overnight to become trained early years educators or professionals? No, really. The teacher is trained, the teacher needs to guide, and every day when they look at that face of the teacher in smaller groups. So, what we did was like smaller group lessons for them with five teachers each. Now, with these children, the parents needed to be seated with them so that they're there essentially in the beginning, and parents may be working, there could be an issue with device or whatever, so we had evening slots done for them and so on. So you have to come out with ways what suits each one.
Yeah, very
And so
rightly, very rightly
and
said.
yes, social emotional well-being is at the center, and the way teaching and learning, the way pedagogy is, it can't be a one-side track. We need to bond together. We need to ensure a lot of collaboration, a lot of working together and
In fact,
supporting each other
we also
within
need.
teaching.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact,
Sorry,
just
I'm
to add your point that we as an educator also need creativity, because whatever was boring earlier on a paper pen or in a book, also boring in the iPad or a desktop or a laptop or a
yeah,
smartphone. So
yeah.
we have to find out creative ways through which we can engage with the children, and therefore they will enjoy, and then we will get the benefit because they would learn better. As I said, like I told about my granddaughter, that she sings with the tone of that singer in that particular tone, and when you see how engaged she is, so anything that we want her to get learned, if we can share in that way, probably the child will understand. I will address one question here by Rahul, who talked about something about the mid this thing size companies. Since he's talking about the corporate, so I will take this thing now. Rahul, you ask about that mid carrier. So now mid carrier is everywhere is a issue. It's not a small companies or medium size or a large company. For every company, mid is something which is a problematic in terms of training them, because they are not in the beginning. They were given all the induction training and all sorts of effort. Now they are performing, and that they are not in the other side, like they are in the mid. Now, how to keep them motivated, how to keep them engaged, is not only a learning issue; it's also an HR issue. How to show them the career path that they still have something. And that's where the role of assessment centers will come into play. There the role of succession planning will come. So a lot of HR intervention will go together along with learning. Learning will be one methodology, but then we need to have other HR intervention, organizational development interventions, which are required to take them to the next level. Otherwise, That's where the decline will start, and people they tend to leave or their productivity goes down. I hope this answers. I think